Welcome back to today's Explainer. Have you ever wondered why, even when you're doing literally everything right with your diet or your workouts, that super stubborn belly fat just completely refuses to budge? Man, it is incredibly frustrating to put in all that effort and just feel like your metabolism is, I don't know, actively working against you. But the answer to this whole puzzle? It might not be in the gym, and it definitely might not be in your calorie tracking app. The answer might actually be hiding in the exact moments right after you open your eyes in the morning. So today we're taking this really eye-opening dive into the biology of our mornings. We're going to break down the actual science of morning fat mobilization and exactly how you can optimize the very start of your day to work with your biology instead of fighting against it.
Okay, let's dive into this. The moment your eyes open, a biological countdown begins. Literally, for the next 30 minutes, your body isn't just slowly, lazily waking up, it's actively running this incredibly specific, highly orchestrated hormonal sequence. It's like a rapid symphony of chemical signals. And the absolute wildest part of this whole process, this brief 30-minute window literally decides the fate of your metabolism for the next 8 hours. It completely determines whether your fat cells are going to spend the entire day actively releasing stored energy, or if they're going to stubbornly lock all that energy away, which makes fat loss virtually impossible no matter what you try to do later in the afternoon.
Moving on to Section 1, the cortisol awakening response.
Every single morning, there is an unseen biological clock ticking inside of you, and it's driven by, honestly, the most misunderstood protagonist in our entire biology, the cortisol awakening response, or CAR for short. Now look, when most of us hear the word cortisol, we instantly recoil, right? We immediately think of toxic stress, looming work deadlines, chronic anxiety, the whole shebang. But I really need you to completely rethink that right now. This specific morning pulse of cortisol, it's a legitimate, incredibly healthy mobilization signal. Think of it kind of like your body's built-in internal cup of coffee. Your body has actually been meticulously preparing this release since around 2 a.m. while you were fast asleep. Your adrenal glands push this out the exact second you wake up, not because you're stressed out, but because your system literally needs to boot up, clear out that groggy sleep inertia, and actively mobilize stored energy for the day ahead.
And the sheer volume of this natural surge is pretty staggering. To put it into perspective, in a healthy person, your cortisol levels rise by 50 to 100% within just the first 20 to 30 minutes of waking up. That is the sharpest hormonal spike you're going to experience all day long. A really major study published in the Psychoneuroendocrinology journal actually looked specifically at this phenomenon. And what they found was that the magnitude of this fat-mobilizing response is highly sensitive to your wake routines, meaning this massive hormonal spike reacts instantly to whatever you choose to do the moment you throw off the covers and get out of bed. Basically, it's just sitting there waiting for instructions from you.
And because it's waiting for those instructions, you're essentially left with two entirely separate outcomes from the exact same hormone. And it's determined entirely by your first 30 minutes. What you do immediately after waking up is either going to take that massive 50 to 100% surge and amplify it into a really powerful sustained signal to burn fat, or it's going to distort it into a frantic, panicked command to store fat. It really all comes down to the environment you create for your body right off the bat first thing in the morning.
All right, on to Section 2, fat storing morning mistakes.
So, it's time to talk about the villains of our narrative here. The modern morning habits that just completely sabotage this delicate fat-burning window. There are 3 common mistakes. Checking your phone immediately upon waking, eating a high-sugar or carb-heavy breakfast right away, and staying horizontal and sedentary in bed for way too long. Be honest, most of us probably do at least one of these, if not all 3. And we do it entirely without realizing the intense biological chaos we're causing right at the absolute most critical point of our metabolic day. So let's break down exactly why the science shows these really common everyday actions are so destructive.
Let's start with your phone. Why is reaching for your device literally the worst thing you can do? Well, it's because visceral belly fat actually contains 4 times more cortisol receptors than fat anywhere else on your body. Imagine these receptors are like tiny little satellite dishes, just waiting to pick up a signal. When you grab your phone and immediately start processing urgent emails, negative news, or just overwhelming social media notifications, you are introducing sudden psychological stress right at the absolute peak of your natural cortisol surge. The University of British Columbia actually conducted research on this exact early morning email stress, and their findings directly link this prolonged, anxiety-driven cortisol state to visceral belly fat accumulation. So by just looking at your phone in bed, you're feeding a stress-amplified cortisol signal straight to the exact tissue that is the most receptive to it.
Now, what happens when you combine that amplified, stressed-out cortisol with a quick, sugary breakfast?
like cereal, toast, or a big glass of fruit juice, you get an absolute catastrophic hormonal collision. Elevated cortisol plus elevated insulin equals the ultimate fat storage signal. See, cortisol has already primed your fat cells to receive instructions. But when you eat high glycemic foods right away, your blood sugar spikes, which forces this massive release of insulin. Insulin then swoops in, completely overrides the natural fat mobilization your body was trying to do, and instead delivers a powerful storage command straight into your belly. It's a total roadblock.
Let's move to Section 3, Inside Your Fat Cells.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is to truly understand how profound this is, we need to basically shrink ourselves down onto the cellular battlefield. We need to look at the contrast between two distinct receptors on your fat cells. First up, you have beta-adrenergic receptors. These essentially act like the unlock button on your fat cells. They respond primarily to cortisol and adrenaline, and they trigger fat release, which is this beautiful metabolic process called lipolysis. On the flip side of that, you have alpha-adrenergic receptors. These act as the lock button. They're triggered heavily by insulin, and they actively command your body to halt fat breakdown and immediately store any incoming energy as fat.
So think about this. When you wake up fasted after a full night of sleep, your body enters this genuinely beautiful biological state. Cortisol is naturally rising to wake you up, but because you haven't eaten anything yet, your insulin is still incredibly low. What does that mean? It means your beta receptors are entirely dominant. You're in an active state of fat burning right out of the gate. Your body is actively unlocking those cells and releasing free fatty acids into your bloodstream so they can be burned up as fuel for your morning. But the exact second you introduce processed carbs and spike your insulin, you aggressively activate those alpha receptors, slamming the gate shut and completely turning off this biological fat burning window.
Which brings us to Section 4, the optimal morning protocol.
So, the big question: how do we actually fix this and protect our metabolism? Well, here is the exact research-backed biological checklist to protect your morning signal. First, get bright light in your eyes within 10 minutes of waking up. A really fascinating study in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology showed that when bright light hits your optic nerve, it effectively shapes your cortisol response into a healthy, contained pattern, rather than a prolonged stress response. Second, delay your food by 30 to 60 minutes. The Obesity Journal found that this simple delay vastly improves your insulin sensitivity for the rest of the day. Third, absolutely no phone for the first 20 minutes to prevent that psychological stress amplification we talked about. And finally, fourth, if you can, try to get some fasted movement in. Just a short, brisk 5-minute walk actively uses up those free fatty acids your body is currently releasing, burning them off for good.
Honestly, the most reassuring part of this entire protocol is that it is fundamentally a zero-effort intervention. Seriously, this is not some grueling new restrictive diet you have to suffer through. You aren't desperately cutting calories or weighing your food out on a tiny scale. You are simply waiting. That's it. You're just giving your body the 30 to 60 minutes it desperately needs to naturally finish its built-in, completely free fat-burning program before you sit down to eat your breakfast.
Let's wrap things up with Section 5, the complete 24-hour cycle.
Let's zoom out to the big picture for a second and look at how this all ties into a complete 24-hour cycle. Because in human biology, every single step compounds. It's like a domino effect. You start with a protein-rich dinner in the evening, right? That provides your natural growth hormone with the amino acids it needs to repair tissue overnight. By 1 a.m., because of that healthy dinner, your blood sugar is perfectly stable, which completely avoids any of those frantic midnight cortisol spikes that cause you to wake up sweating. Then overnight, getting around 7 hours of sleep keeps your leptin levels, that's your satiety hormone, high, and it keeps your insulin sensitivity nice and sharp. And then finally, when morning arrives, you are perfectly primed to execute your new routine and protect that cortisol awakening response.
When you start stacking these simple habits together, the ultimate benefits are profound. We're talking optimized fat mobilization, the preservation of your lean muscle tissue, and just incredible, long-lasting metabolic health overall. And honestly, the best part? No calorie counting required. No way. You aren't forcing your body into submission or constantly fighting against your own hunger cues. Instead, you're finally living in harmony with your biology. You're simply creating the exact environmental conditions your body and your hormones were brilliantly designed to operate in effortlessly.
But you know, the story of your metabolism definitely doesn't stop with just your morning hormones. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative thought. What program are the bacteria in your gut running right now?
I ask because your microbiome actually has a direct, constant communication line to your fat cells and your cortisol levels. So next time, we're going to dive super deep into your gut to decode the hidden biological program those microscopic bacteria are running inside you every single second. You definitely won't want to miss it. Keep learning, stay focused, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.